Alright, Beggar's Chicken. If you're making a Beggar's Chicken, it's highly advisable to get a chicken. And what I've done with this particular chicken, it's a standard small oven ready chicken, which I've soaked overnight in brine, and the brine was made up with half a cup of salt mixed with some boiled water, and then topped up to just over the level of the chicken, and that's been left overnight. Now that will help keep the moisture and lock the moisture into your chicken when it goes through the cooking process. Beggar's Chicken is a very, very ambitious project for me, and it's probably one that could get me struck off the lazy cook register, but we'll have a try anyway, shall we? I'll just put that to one side. I first had this wonderful dish many years ago as part of a huge gourmet level Chinese banquet in Kowloon, Hong Kong. All the diners at the end were presented with a little symbolic brass hammer as a memento of the occasion. Sadly enough, I've lost mine now. So I started off doing my research by looking at Emmy Made in Japan, at her recipe, which you'll see above. And I did some more research. I went to a Cantonese website called Bob's Your Uncle, and I looked at theirs, and I also went to look at an Indian version of it, Farm Food Factory, which is spicy, and it doesn't use the lotus leaves as we see here. It actually uses a banana leaf of some description that's particularly good for cooking in. But all those links you'll see above now or at the end of the video. Right, so lotus leaves, you can buy these in packs like this online, and they're dried. So what I will now need to do is get 3 of those into soak. Lotus leaves impart a fabulous flavour to the Beggar's Chicken, and it really does taste excellent, the version I had. Right, the other ingredients you'll need, I've got a mixture of Chinese dried black fungus, and in this case it's been shredded, which I've used. I just put it in a jar with a few dried shiitake mushrooms. They come again, they're just standard dried shiitake mushrooms, and I put them in the jar overnight. So I set all that going the night before, and now they're fully hydrated and ready to use. And I'll just show you how to prep those in a couple of minutes. You don't have to go to any great stretch in getting. You can just use ordinary mushrooms if you can't obtain these easily. But if you want to make it more authentic, use these. The traditional Cantonese recipe calls for using the liver, stomach, heart and giblets, and even the intestines of the chicken to stuff it with. I actually prefer it when we use Brunswick ham, like Emmy Made in Japan used. If you're not watching Emmy Made in Japan, subscribe, because she's absolutely wonderful. She's such a sweet and disarming woman, and I really love her presentation style, and she's not afraid to tackle some of the more difficult culinary challenges. So, right, the other things you'll need are some, I've got about 4 spring onions which I've chopped up roughly. I've got 2 cloves of garlic which I've just crushed. I've got 3 slices of ginger which I've cut into these julienne, matchstick julienne. And I've got some bamboo shoots. These are canned bamboo shoots, so what's that? That's 120 grams drained weight, and about the same 140 grams drained weight of sliced water chestnuts. The really great thing about these 2 items is it doesn't matter how long you cook them, they still retain their crunch. And so they're excellent. I need to drain those, and I also now need to chop up my mushrooms. So I just want to drain those quickly. So there they are drained. I used I think about 7 shiitake mushrooms, 7 or 8, and just a slack handful of the black fungus. And this also retains its texture. It's got a wonderful texture when you cook it. Now, to prepare these, what I do is I'd cut down there and then I cut off the stem. The stems are rather woody on dried shiitake mushrooms, and then I just run the knife through each half a couple of times, so I end up with these nice strips, and I'll just crack on with the rest and get those done. Okay, that's my mushrooms chopped up, and of course the other ingredient we'll need is some clay. Now I've ordered 5 kilograms of clay online because I spare no expense for you, my dear viewers. And we're going to wrap the whole thing in the clay. Now this traditionally would have been cooked over an open fire with the ashes in the embers of an open fire, with the ashes scattered all over the top. And you will see that in the Bob's Your Uncle video, and you'll see how that's done in that one. But you'll need some clay. Now if you want to see how to make your clay, look at Emmy's video. Emmy manages to dig up some clay and washes it through and refines it until she's got something that works extremely well. So without further ado, we need to start thinking about getting the chicken out of the brine, rinsed, patted dry, and then stuffed. So here's my chicken, which I've taken out of the brine. I've rinsed it with cold water and I've patted it dry. Now I've done a quick calculation and I've got rather too much stuffing, so I'm going to save half of these ingredients for a stir fry later. So I'll just put that together in a bowl separately so I can gauge how easy it is to stuff it. So I've got a bowl. I'm going to put in my garlic, my ginger and my spring onions. All that wants to go in. I'm going to put in half of my mushrooms, so that's the shiitake and the black fungus. I'm going to put in all the Brunswick ham, and I'll do a quick assessment of that and see where we are. And I think I can use a few bamboo shoots and get away with a few water chestnuts. Let me have a gauge of that. So as you see, I've got a bowl which will be more than enough to stuff the chicken with. So these ingredients will go aside and make me a nice little stir fry later. Sounds good? Sounds good. Moving swiftly on, I want to use some of this Chinese dark soy sauce, which I will put on the outside of the skin. And you don't need much, about a teaspoon, and then rub that all over the outside of the skin. Chinese dark soy sauce has a kind of molasses taste to it and smell to it, and it is rather good for colouring as well as flavouring. And into the cavity in there goes as much of this stuff in as I can get in, and anything that I can't get in will go into my stir fry later. You want to cram it right in. There's a lot of goodness in there. Make sure you get the garlic in. There you go. Let's have a look. Where are we? I think we're about there, aren't we? Look. So that then seals up. What I've done is I've kept their little tie, and I'll wrap that around there, around there. So now our chicken's stuffed and ready to go into its wrapper. Okay, now my chicken's stuffed. I've laid it on 3 lotus leaves, which I've just stacked on top of one another. I'm going to use about half a teaspoon of 5 spice powder, which I'll sprinkle over the bird, and then I want to give it a splash of mushroom soy sauce on top. Just use ordinary soy sauce if you haven't got mushroom. And just a little splash. And a little splash of oyster flavoured sauce. And then rub all that in over the outside of the bird. And then we proceed to wrap it up. Closing in the top, just like a little parcel. And then you turn all that over and you do the same again. And you wrap it all up like that. Turn it over yet again. And wrap it up. So once you've got that wrapped up, we now need to concentrate on getting it wrapped in clay. Okay, this is where it gets messy. What I'm going to do is shape the clay. I cut it into slices first, and then I'm just going to dress it on the outside, making sure that every bit gets covered up. Once you've got most of the top covered, you can flip it round and then start to work on the bottom. Once you've got it covered, go around the whole bird. Make sure it's patched up where there are any breaks, and then you can start to shape it into something that represents something you'd like to put on your table. I'm just going to put these finger striations across the top just to make it look cool, and then I need now to transfer that. I'm going to transfer that to a baking tray. I'm just going to put on the bottom of the baking tray, I'm just going to put another lotus leaf on the bottom of the baking tray and then transfer it to it. As you can see, it's a messy old business, but it's great fun. So I've just put a folded lotus leaf into the bottom of my baking tray, and now with much difficulty I'm going to transfer the Beggar's chicken into my baking tray. Alright, that's more or less ready to go into the oven. I think I might just take a fork and drag it over it to give it some texture. Make it look kind of pretty before it goes in. Right, cooking times. Because this is in clay, and rather like when I use my chicken in a brick, what I want to do is I want to put this into an initially cold oven, which I've cranked up really high to about 250, 225 Celsius, which is around about 450 Fahrenheit. Basically as hot as your oven will go without burning your house down. And that stays at that temperature for about an hour, and then we crank it right down to 160 degrees Celsius for another 2 hours. And then, boys and girls, we should have ourselves a beggar's chicken. Alright, while all this cooking is going on, got a bit of a sweat on here, I'm just going to read you out a little bit of history about the dish itself. Beggar's Chicken is a classic signature dish from the Jiangsu province in China. Like I said earlier, I first had this probably in about 1983 or 1984 as part of this massive gourmet level Chinese banquet in Kowloon in Hong Kong, and it was amazing then. This is the first time I've attempted it, so please be kind with me if it turns out awfully. At the end of the ceremony, because we had to break open the clay, you're presented with a little ceremonial brass hammer to honour the occasion, because it is a very special thing. I've mentioned Emmy Made in Japan's channel. I've mentioned Bob's Your Uncle channel, which is in Cantonese, but it's with English subtitles, and the recipe on that video is in both Chinese and English, which I've kind of recreated there just as an aid memoir for me. But the Farm Food Factory one is a very spicy version of it, and it's made by the Indian channel Farm Food Factory, and again it's totally different in essence. It's made using a kind of banana leaf along with river clay, and very, very spicy indeed. So be sure to check those links out. They'll either be above you or be below in the description. Now the story of it is this. Apparently a beggar had stolen a chicken, and to avoid being captured he hid the chicken, wrapped it in river clay and hid it so it wouldn't be found. And then later on he threw, rather not wanting to waste the chicken, he threw the whole thing onto the embers of his fire and allowed it to cook. And if you know anything about Chinese folklore, you know that emperors happen along at really the wrong moment. Well, an emperor happened along at really the wrong moment and caught him opening up his chicken. And he shared the chicken with the emperor because it was a meal fit for an emperor, and thereon after it's been called Beggar's Chicken. That's the best I know about it, but I'm sure if you look far and wide, do your research on the internet, you'll find it. You'll find more legends about this amazing signature dish. Right, let's have a look at this Beggar's Chicken, shall we? Only a slight gush of steam, which means that most of it stayed in the chicken, we hope. And it looks like it's started to crack. Right, I'm going to ask my brother Richard to step up here a moment and do the honours with this. The traditional Chinese way of doing this is to cover it with a red cloth and then bash it, the red for look, I suppose, but it looks like it's already had a good bashing. But what I'll do is I'll just ceremonially ask my brother to give it a good old whack. There you go, Dick. Yeah, just give it the good news, mate. You want it to basically chip off. Right, and the reveal, please, sir. That looks about ready to unwrap, so I'll just dress that up for you, boys and girls, and then we can have a good old look at that. Wow, that does smell good. Well, there is no doubt about it, this has made an incredibly beautifully cooked chicken. That looks pretty amazing, notwithstanding the complete mess of the leaves and everything. But don't forget, I mean, this was designed to be cooked and done outdoors, so most of this mess wouldn't really matter to us, would it? So let's see what we got here. Let's cut that off. Get that out of there. And see where we are. Okay, this has been my first attempt at Beggar's Chicken, and I'm really rather quite pleased with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plate some of that up and show you what it looks like. Alright Dick, tell us what you think of it.
Let's have a go.
That's the water chestnut you got on top there.
Gathered that.
As the chicken, is it moist? It certainly looks moist. And what about the filling? Have a little bit of that. Try that for me.
Yeah?
Yeah, that filling. There you go. Go on lad, take it away and enjoy it. Yummy. If you have enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you would like to follow my channel, please subscribe and be sure to click the bell icon to receive notification of all my upcoming videos. Thanks for watching.